Those of you in the back, if you would move up, please. I mean, yeah, move up. How's that? Is that better? Okay. Okay. I'm happy to welcome all of you here to the third Thursday reading of January, the first month of the year, at a very particular time in the life of our nation, just a few days before we're all going to know that a terribly damaged person is going to be sworn in as the President of the United States. And sort of the silver lining of this is that it really seems like it's bringing a lot of people together to sort of speak their piece, to talk about what they really value in the United States of America, what's important to them. And it seems to me the biggest the biggest voice that we want to hear is the voice of humaneness, the voice that feels like it's lacking in our president and the people who in government support him and will be working on his behalf rather than on the behalf of the real good of all of us Americans. And so it feels very important that each time we meet here on the third Thursday of the month, this feels like a really important action that we're taking to talk about, to delve into what it really means to be truly human and humane. So I'm very happy to being able to introduce the poets who are going to read tonight. But before I start, as sort of maybe a blessing on this gathering, a blessing on all of our work, whether we're poet or just a lover of poetry. I'm going to read just a few lines from a poem by the poet Yehuda Amichai, who's an Israeli poet. He's no longer alive. And it's from a book he wrote called Open, Closed, Open Poems. And he was definitely looking back at his life and really thinking about, well, what have I done here as a human being on earth? What has my work and what has my life meant? So these few lines are from his poem, I wasn't one of the 6 million, and what is my lifespan? Open, closed, open. I believe with perfect faith that at this very moment, millions of human beings are standing at crossroads and intersections in jungles and deserts, showing each other where to turn, what the right way, which direction. And I do think that that's one of the things that poetry does. Um, and one thing, let me also say that those of you who are really hoping to hear Gray Jacobic because of a scheduling problem, she couldn't be here tonight, but we're hoping that she'll be able to read in the series before the season is over. But the poets who are here are very special people. They're, besides being really wonderful poets, they're also people who have, over many years, really worked for the whole poetry community in the Washington area. We're going to begin with Don Illich. And Don was the president of the Federal Poets Poetry Workshop. The Federal Poets, I mean, and this is, I think, one of the reasons that there's hope, you know, in the world, in Washington. The Federal Poets is the longest running poetry workshop in the Washington area. I mean, it was started in 1944 for people who actually worked for the federal government, and many of the poets who come now do, but they have also broadened their scope a little bit. And I believe they do a workshop once a month at the Georgetown Library, and they're also, or people who are in the workshop, in the Federal Poets, are also have a once a month reading at the Georgetown Library. So they're really bringing poetry to a part of the city that could really use it. And the thing about Don is that what's really wonderful, and it's wonderful, think about all the federal poets who have the imagination, the sense of humor, as well as the care for words that Don has. And so I'd like to sort of introduce him with some of his own words. And I'm just going to read a little bit of a poem called The Sick Person. And in the poem, there's a group of people who work in an office somewhere, and one person, it seems, keeps getting sick and not coming to work. And it sort of adds a real interest to everyone else in the office. Okay. Once we needed his absent expertise, which stopped our projects dead, as if a zombie had eaten their brains. Now we treat him as a lost ghost who sometimes shows up for an hour or two, promising to finish the document we wanted, but disappearing the next day, fading into his afterlife. We wondered if he had leave left, but obviously he'd stay on the payroll no matter what. His office would remain filled with his stuff, his project calendar for the last year stuck to the wall. Some of us began to see him as a saint. They prayed when they wished to skip a long assignment, said rosaries to his name. Soon they'd appear in casts, better off staying at home. In time, the office started to empty out. Everyone else coughed, about to go home, ready to call in the next day. Their vanishings. So, I'd like to welcome Don Illich.
Thank you, Anne, for a really great introduction, particularly about the federal poets. If anybody's interested, they can talk to me after the reading, but it's a really great group. Um, I'm going to read like the first 7 or 8 poems from my new chapbook, which is called The Art of Dissolving, from Finishing Line Press. I'm really proud of it. It's really nice chapbook. They did a good job. The first poem that I'm going to read is called Gravity. My parents used to tell me that gravity turned off at night, that everyone floated in their night clothes, bouncing against the walls of their rooms, sometimes flying out a window. When someone woke up like me, everyone returned to their original positions, snoring as if nothing had happened. I don't know why they told me this, except to screw around with my imagination, to keep it working in a useless direction. Even now at 3 in the morning, I try to catch my wife hovering near me, with the books and shelves above us bobbing near the ceiling. I sometimes have the feeling I was the one whom gravity abandoned, that I'm the loose person who will stick to neither a job or a life. No one tells me, though. They watch me rise like a balloon, sending darts toward me, waiting. The second poem is called All That Happened. It began when I was small, ended when I was much larger. You could hardly see me through a microscope, then only through a telescope. Yesterday I was a sliver, then I became the moon. Yesterday I was a point, then I formed everything. In between there were treasure chests, eyeballs, spaceships, ghosts, and pickled eggs. In between there were martinis and olives, totalities, existences. I could remember what happened. I could never recall it all. Um, this one's called The Morning of the Scissors. And it's a little more abstract than the other two. Um, the morning of the scissors is a welcome one. It's time to cut out the moon above us, leaving only light. It's our chance to eat stars before they commit the crimes we wanted to. Our belief is that the blades will perform the procedures we have put off for too long. They will conquer every shred of paper here, filling the world with bits of white and black. They will live a life beyond them, the nose of the resurrected, the smile of blue razors. Soon it will be noon and they will have to rest, to lie in a drawer with other utensils that have not done enough to earn their roles. All around the desk are the shreds loved asked for, the notes without the words, just alphabets without a ladder home to the lips that kissed them, sent them away with a wish to push the adored one step closer. Now the path has been ripped. Nowhere to go, nothing to do but forget language exists. The heart of the eye has been chipped and chewed. It hangs off the ceiling lamp, slowly burning. I tried to put some humorous poems, considering, this may not necessarily be a very humorous time for many people. Um, this one is called Jeff. Jeff was my mechanic, prone to lying, but capable of repairing my engine, dents, my inner life. Another Jeff was on signs for elections to lower taxes, put bad guys in jail. He approved his TV commercials with a zombie grin. Three Jeffs hid behind the school and smoked pot, each one voiceless except to say that this was really strong. They would catapult their station wagon off a bridge to be known as Jeff's Bridge by those who knew them. Jeff rung up my penthouse magazines without a wink. Jeff sung at church without a lick of melody. Some Jeffs in my city had a club deep in the financial district where they drank highballs and puffed cigars and decided the direction of the world. I wanted to be a Jeff. I slid myself to the city court to fill in that name over mine, but the judge wouldn't hear of it, slamming his gavel. He spat tobacco at a spittoon, questioned my manhood. All I desired was a different life. How was that wrong? The Jeffs above probably knew why. Gods dining on ambrosia, trucker caps on, ready to ride their lightning down to my heart. This is also hopefully humorous. It's called We Try to Surrender to the Bus Driver. I like the title. um, he just wanted change for us to swipe our fare cards across an electronic surface. Nobody on the vehicle would let us give up. Nobody owned handcuffs to take us away or a phone to call law enforcement so they could drag us in. When we got off, we encountered a delivery person who refused to ship us to the authorities, and a green grocer who gave us a banana because she felt sorry for us. When we woke this morning, we had the feeling that we were guilty, an imperative that we be captured before we did any more harm. We couldn't say what we'd done or to whom we'd done it to. Everything was shadowy, reinforcing the absence of light. Finally, we met our loves, who secured us in cars, drove us around in circles so we'd get confused as they blindfolded us. When we were led to the door, we suspected a shark tank or a meat grinder. When we saw lights on the cakes, we knew we'd been born. Frosting would stick to our lips, the balloons would float above us, red and bright like cherries, spinning in slot machines, dazzling in rows. The moon is up. I left for work with the moon still up. I thought I should say something to it. Praise for staying up late so long. Confusion for wondering why it hadn't retired yet. The buildings were wreathed in fading darkness, the windows portholes to light. Traffic ran as usual, speedy beetles exiting, entering streets, imparting noise of their farewells, exhaust and silence when they departed. The gray mums died next to the sidewalk. The puddles left the path, the clouds taking the water. Only a little mud touched the grass, which was still bright green, despite leaves collapsing on the ground. If I could, I'd build a miniature model of this little world. I'd plant myself in the middle, hands reaching out toward the sky, as if I could change things by praying to the blackness above me. Except it was a work day, and dreams of holding everything in my hands were illusory. Here was my brown desk, my monitor, my keyboard. I was the action figure typing up a memo, watching the sun come back through the blinds, feeling I was heroic just being there. And this is the title poem. It's called The Art of Dissolving. What you have to do is think of Alka Seltzers, those speckled pills splashing into a glass like bank robbers falling from a cliff, which foam and bubble when they hit the water. When it's time to be devoured, you can walk away from your job, hear those plops in your mind as you walk around with your personal box of effects, feel your legs, stomach, chest start to explode with fizz, while your head readies itself to drop, lose all the thoughts you ever had. But oh, what a relief it is not to have them, to wander underground in the life of the mind, where no one suspects you haven't been spent, dissolved so the world can drink you quicker. Uh, this one is my favorite Christmas cannibal poem called "The Gingerbread Man." Uh, he's always disturbed when he catches us eating the cookies. He doesn't want to say anything, so he runs quickly out the door, scared a dog might eat him, leaving a gap in his midsection. He'd have to be baked again, flour and water added to heal it. It's his least favorite holiday, where all he sees are little hymns and plastic jars, all with red gumdrop eyes, inanimate, ready for consumption. At work, he avoids the parties, where everyone munches desserts, where he fears to watch his boss crunching his legs. At home, he can pretend no one wishes to devour him completely. He decorates his house with frosting, tells us he's busy with hauling up candies to the roof. We know one day he'll drop off the ladder. We'll be there, gathering shards, sticking them in our mouths. Kind of grotesque. A little bit. This one is also kind of a holiday one, uh, called December Song. It's a little more serious. Turn the star, let its light dazzle someone else. Throw the tree in a heap with the after Christmas blues dangling from its branches. There's no manger where a baby waits expectantly for a gift of cologne and a wallet. The animals do not sing or bow down, the wise men laugh as they get lost. All that's on the horizon is time burning the desert, rivers, hills, shoving everything into its deep mouth like the sweetest dessert eternity ever knew. Carry the cross away in your hands, snort the frankincense, dab the myrrh on your skin. Look at the falls where the calendar breaks into new months, into centuries not yet imagined. The star spins overhead, but it's unreachable. The big gold ball drops, and we're all frozen in flashes. This one is called The Invention of People. It's a new one, not in a chat book. People were made people, given funny names, 5 fingers on each hand, 10 toes total for the feet. They received bicycles and cars. They drove them into each other, breaking their limbs and dying. Some had a mean streak. They tortured others, drank their suffering, became powerful. With shovels and machinery, they dug into the earth for gold, silver, platinum, uranium. They sometimes made love in the darkness and light, tasting each other's skin, lying in each other's arms. Their world was invented with each footstep they took, each flight of helicopters and planes. Each morning, people had to act their parts, follow their brains' lines. If someone went off the script, the earth was transformed. If there was no play, the sun refused to rise. The moon stayed in place, frozen. They slept and lived in dreams, deciding to never wake up. This one is called Wagon Full of Rocks. I drive past a yard of wood chips and a set of steps to my apartments, which block a hungry dinner plate moon. Dish rag clouds ring a creepy glow from the windows. My fingers grip the wheel they held loosely before. By the building's familiar stoop stands a red wagon full of rocks, the white sidewalks coated in dead bugs and broken twigs. I step out, a pack on my shoulder. A breeze makes me shiver. I recall my old lives, pink duplexes bound with roses, dorms with cell-like columns. They unpeel in my memory, but I can't eat this fruit. I ride on to the next street, fearing it'll only be a city planner sketch, and I won't be able to feel the space between the lines. I'll, I'm going to just read 2 more if I have time. Um, this one is about being a butterfly. Everyone expected it from me. It's called Butterfly Suit. Please be careful of the butterflies. I could be dressed like a monarch, orange and black, a tiger's plumage. You might try to take my photo as I sap flowers of their nectar. You might want to catch me in a net so you can watch me struggle helplessly. Know that I'm dressed like this for beauty. Define its definition from within its skin. To embrace what is small in this universe that can fly quietly past your eyes, unnoticed until the drops of color hit you, and your heart freezes, your nerves feel electricity. Cell by cell, you become different. Atom by atom, you cannot be the same. And I'll leave you with this one. This is kind of a lark. It's called Talking Squirrel. And thanks everybody for coming and listening, and Takoma Park for hosting this great reading. I am not open to talking to animals. They're supposed to know their own language. English should be impossible for them. But God knows the squirrel said my name. Don, it said, you are going in the wrong direction. At first, I thought it meant north or south. Then I believed it was a spiritual assessment. I was following my spirit incorrectly. But I had talked to God the other day, and I felt we were in agreement as much as we could be, that I would die and he'd stay immortal. Perhaps morally I was falling apart, that I mistreated those I had loved, or failed to be a brother to my brothers. But I checked my nooks and crannies, resolved I wasn't worse than anyone else. I came to the conclusion this squirrel only knew those words and spoke them to everyone. So when the hawk flew down and seized it, branding it into the air as part of the food chain, I didn't feel as if I had lost a miracle. And as I walked through the rest of the park, as the blue jay said, Don, what's happening? And the gopher said, Don, who's your daddy? I shoved my hands in my pockets and I moved on. Thank you.
And thank you, Don, for bringing us into your wonderful world where squirrels, all the animals know your name. Yeah. So, the next poet who's going to read is Patrick Pepper. And again, Patrick is a wonderful poet, and you'll hear in his work um, that he is, in some ways, a formalist, and yet at the same time, and he can use what seem like sort of ancient ancient rhythms and rhymes, but he definitely lives very much in the modern world. Um, and again, like Don, Patrick has really contributed a lot to the poetry community in Washington, D.C. He was for many years the president of Washington Writers Publishing House, which is really a cooperative press, so that the authors who are published then work very hard to see other books come out and help other poets get their work out into the world. Um, and Patrick has a very interesting background. As an undergraduate, he studied philosophy, but as I guess a lot of philosophers are wont to do, that didn't seem to lead him in the direction of a career, and he became a self-taught engineer. And I think when you hear his work, that this really is an engineering job that he's done. You get a sense of these wonderful connections. The poem as perhaps a machine, and he makes these wonderful connections using language. And so I wanted to also introduce Patrick by a short poem that he wrote, which is called Pond Road Spring. Those nights, the randy frogs rang clear, lured by the evening star. They lit the darkness for the ear and kept our dreams ajar until the sun teacher of trust, ascended the whole and harsh to heat the red wings into lust and reignite the marsh. So I welcome Patrick Pepper to the stage.
Thank you, Anne, for the introduction. It was very nice, and I thank everybody for being here, and I thank Takoma Park Third Thursday Poetry for having me to read. Um, Gee, Don, that was really good. I really enjoyed your reading. I don't know what I'm going to do now. This first poem is in memory of Nan Fry. She died late last summer, and I got word that she died, and I was surprised. It was kind of just a surprise, a shock. And I sat down at the computer, and I just sort of aimlessly looked up whatever poems that were on there on the internet for her, and I constructed this poem out of a lot of images that were in those poems. Elegy for Nan. You were the pear in your poem, and the pear tree too. You bent down your branch to the handless maiden, and in moonlight fed her. And you were the maiden, hungry, always hungry, and lost in her clothes. You were the root, trunk, branch, and fruit. And the old man, deep in the woods, beside a stream, doing his yoga, becoming tree, fish, swan, bridge, where the wide-eyed deer browsed at his feet, your feet, and you were the deer. You were the riddle, in a too big sweater, roaming the towpath in every season. The animal cries becoming human, the 5 daughters of your mother tongue. And your mother tongue was poetry. You were the poetry, the answer to all riddles. And so you are, and yet you were. I'm going to read tonight just a few poems from a couple of manuscripts that I'm working on. One I'm beginning to send out. I just began to send it out, and it's a manuscript about it's a bunch of snow poems that I wrote over many years. So I'm going to read a few of those. The title of the manuscript is "Everything Pure as Nothing." This first one I'm going to read has an epigraph from Sarah Teasdale. Fairy snow, blowing, blowing everywhere. Would that I, too, could fly lightly, lightly through the air. Sarah Teasdale. It snowed as in a fairy tale, and we were giddy, knocking through the sideways, slanting, crazy-making snow, fresh from the cautionary joy of WTOP radio, as if we didn't know where we were walking, straight down Rhode Island Avenue Northeast, with the hiss and rattle of vehicles, the usual snafu Washington becomes. We heard a whizzing metro pass above our heads, heard it whine to a stop. I looked up through the blow of flakes at the very moment a very resolute freight train pushed past the growing traffic fiasco. And then your boot kicked up a snow-entombed lump, a frozen sparrow, Oh, and still we were giddy. Our boots, our boots lumbered up 12th Street, left on Monroe. We made the shrine by 2 o'clock, that gigantic limestone curio, authority in white, one might easily misconstrue, but for the dinging of its bells, inexplicably dinging then, as if the shrine were dingy too. Then Glenwood Cemetery, nearly home, the stones with jaunty hats of snow in a soft white meadow, and we were giddy. The last snow, also with an epigraph. How can we certainly know if this is time falling or snow? That's from Virginia Hamilton Adair's poem called White Darkness. How improbable the forecast. A fourth storm in 4 weeks. Snow so late this season. Today, March 5th, 2015. As if it were still February or even January. Not near the end and turning soon to spring, with daylight savings coming Sunday. And 7 inches. Golly Neds, I think, as we used to say. Not so improbably, we're out of salt, and the snow shovel is mangled into scrap from chopping ice, and the spade's cold steel has grown dull and slightly rolled at its point. Yet soon 50-degree weather will blow in. Nothing lasts forever, my love. That's not even a clever thing to say, and how improbable isn't either before we take our nap this afternoon. Yet these are still eternal things to say, meaning forever right now. So I mention them, and I mean them, as snowflakes fill up our street, so many years on from our first snow, and we feel the heat, our body warmth, again along our length. And this last snow poem is the title poem for that manuscript, although the title of the poem isn't the title of the book. It's snowing in the nation's capital. The stars come down, you greet the snow. In our southern town, mass vertigo. Washington wrapped in hush, as odd as evened, and white and lush, all things are leavened. We stamp our shoes and linger here, as if good news has filled the ear at last. Everything, pure as nothing. These poems are from another working manuscript, which I hope to send out in May. It's called right now the working title is Misunderstanding on P Street. How I got my start in poetry. When I was 18, my ballpoint pen took control of my hand and turned it so that the pen was looking straight at me. It said, "Well, Patrick, what do you want to write today?" Surprised and not wanting to seem to be a person who didn't aspire to normalcy, I said, "Nothing." My pen was not impressed, and neither was my paper, who said without patience, "I haven't got all day here, Patrick. In 100 years I'm going to be yellow and crumbly. What do you want to write?" Hey, I'm in charge here," blurted the ballpoint pen. "Just wait your turn to be the boss. I'm doomed to run out of ink in less than a year if Patrick here ever gets going. So you can take over then." Ah, I'm so ephemeral. "Patrick, what do you want to write?" "Well, actually, I would like to write about me," I said. "Not me per se, but what I see." And then I said to both the ballpoint pen and the paper, I want, well, to be the boss of the two of you. And I want you guys to make me immortal, so to speak. I know my body can't live forever, but maybe Patrick could live forever. Get what I mean? As if I had said abracadabra. As if all our lives were just some bits of hocus pocus. The ballpoint pen looked at the paper and the paper at the ballpoint pen, and both turned to me and said in unison, "That's what we were waiting for, Patrick. Let's get started." I said, "Thank you so much, ballpoint pen and paper. You guys are definitely going in the acknowledgments too. I think we can still do it. We still have time. I'm only a freshman." And the ballpoint pen and paper replied, "You're right, Patrick, and the pleasure will be ours. We're so lucky to belong to you." "It's me who's lucky to belong to you," I said. And then we wrote. Misunderstanding on P Street. The now of the mountain bike and the mountain bike itself, parked and chained like a metal stallion to a parking meter, and the parking meter too, as well as the chain itself, and the female up and down of trendy city bottoms, made so by clothes of the highest, lowest style, coming into view and passing out of view, and then the city dogs wagging and sniffing each other, and the indolent trees in their square plots of earth in the sidewalks, and their lazy drifting leaves above the evening's action, and the cornrows of this baby's hair, and the hair itself, and the cellophane cell phone in the ear, elbow-pointed strut, and the cell phone itself stuck in the side of his head, and the sweet, handsome men who kiss hello, and the serious women pecking their serious men hello, and the brothers who mysteriously grab the hands of the brothers hello, on Friday night at 6:55 p.m., and even Friday too, and the wonkish staffer shaking his leg up and down, twirling his pasta at the outdoor table, savoring his white paper all the way through his out-of-fashion thin-rimmed spectacles, twirling and reading and finally sucking the long thin string to his gullet. And the pasta too. What about the pasta? And the white paper, and the fork, and the glasses, and the table. What about the table? Now aren't these people, these animals and plants? In fact, these objects and these actions, they that breeze like candy wrappers into my line of sight, aren't they only interested in love? A love poem. You hear me walk the ceiling tonight, waiting for you to come to bed, and you take your time. That's all right. I'll just watch the machine-like arachnid spit silk to weave in the corner of our bedroom the sticky web of truth. No, how can I be so thoughtless? It's the chemical web of want, where then it will hang itself in space, almost nowhere, almost nothing, a dangling hope for something like nourishment from other mechano-chemical lives. It's all right. Take your time. I'll wait as always, lost in my imagination. You, Miss Arachnid, and I, your lover boy, soon to scuttle up to you, anxious with waiting, and I will agreeably offer you my life. Come on, my spider. Hug me, trap me, take me for the fun of it, cannibalize my mechano-chemical being. With love, for love, our sweet felicity. I think I just got a couple more here. They're kind of longish, but they're not a whole page, just long lines. Traveling alone. We put our wheels to pavement in Troy, New York, and doodled down the tatternated map into Pennsylvania, US 220 out of Towanda, down Bald Eagle Mountain, beyond Tyrone, through Altoona, on to Bedford, over the dashed line to Cumberland, then into West Virginia. The old Plymouth Voyager and I drifted like a memory of Grandma Moses, while the cubist brain and I ran it all over again and again, because our quaintalicious 21st century visions were vivid as a spectacle of roadkill, albeit mostly not so bloody. First, while the actual Appalachians waited like a North American Gaia Mama for the starry night to descend in a sort of mythic intercourse, we noticed how pointillistic appeared the very happy accidents of Cumberland architecture, even as we passed a few dooryards of discombobulated ramshackletude, which seemed the essence of concrete expressionism, and how shaker pure shone the neoclassic steeples in the valleys, sometimes like Mother, and yet not so strangely, sometimes like Jehovah. And here the brain would have me mention how Bentonesque were the confident farms, plowing, flowing, growing our boys and girls, casting our beautiful babes into 20-somethings, and our 20-somethings into soldiers to defend our just causes. No country for old men, we supposed. Like a memory of an old home place, a dream, a poem, this poem, we scribbled past a Shirley colorist yard sale and a whitewashed sign, "Beware the dog, arf." I peered on, the Voyager rolled, and the brain found a way to get home, to the cottage, by the pond, near the sea, off the map, to you. I'll finish up with a trip to the farmer's market. Ah, love, I looked at the sexpot peppers and could not but conclude that all is God's dream. O civilized church bells pealing and reeling up and down 16th Street Northwest, forgive me this day for this little bit of blasphemy, as I am deserving, yea, verily, for I have loved God, and I have wrestled with God, and I have praised God, and I have questioned God, have been God's fool, and been God's sage, with all my heart and all my mind, consistently and inconsistently, in unity and in apparent duality, yea, verily. Hey, you, my partner with the desultory, vivid chard poking up through the unzipped opening of your knapsack, put the groceries in the sleeping fridge. That mysterious, inanimate, and somehow animate machine with all its pipes and gears and dreams and its dark, dreamy whiteness, coldness, our civilization is so grateful for. And its little motor, forever humming the hymn of creation I mostly forget to hear, hungry as I have been. But, after all, and then again, of course, who knows and who can say whence? Dear spouse, may I unbutton your shirt, unzip your jeans? The chard sleeps in the fridge. For you, especially, are the dream of God. Yea, verily, let us be a good dream for God. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Patrick, all the places you took us. This is a copy of Patrick's book. It's called Temporary Apprehensions, and in it there's a terrific poem about a worm. I mean, it's really terrific. So if you can get this book, get it. So now I'm happy to introduce Chris Llewellyn. And again, let me first speak about the work that she's done again for the poetry community. That and actually, she and Patrick both have been members of the Capitol Hill Poetry Workshop, which is not as long running as the Federal Poets, but has been around for a very, very long time and have welcomed many, many of the poets that we love into the workshop. Um, uh, Chris is I guess, my favorite radical. She's done things like she worked for Catholics for Choice. Um, she also worked with me and with Marianne Larkin for the Watershed Foundation. We did recordings of poets reading their work. And one of us, nobody will confess, used to call our work the Sheltered Workshop. You can ask Chris later about that. And she's also been a longtime member of Writing a Village, which is a poetry workshop that I lead here in Takoma Park, and we meet once a month. She's also done things like organized a poetry reading against nuclear war, just many wonderful things like that. Her first book, Fragments from the Fire, about the the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York in 1925, won the Walt Whitman Award in 1986. That she writes often about people who labor and who work and really honors them. I think you'll see in listening to her poems that that she really honors and respects the ordinary people in this world. And so I'd like to welcome Chris Llewellyn. The other thing is that she has there's a new version of Fragments from the Fire with some new poems and an introduction that's written by a woman who is a labor scholar. So that should be very interesting. I think it's just coming out now. So let's welcome Chris Llewellyn.
Thank you. It's been wonderful to read with Don and Patrick. And thank you, Anne, for all your introductions. And thank you, everyone, for being here. And thank you for all those powers that be that have brought Third Thursday poetry about. Yes, well, I write many kinds of poetry, but I do call myself a labor poet. And another labor poet, whose name is Tom Wayman, points out, there is nothing we can touch that is not the product of someone else's labor. And we ourselves would not be here were not for our mother's labor, and the labor that, as we were coming up, fed us, clothed us, housed us. So that is so very true. Well, when I talk about my own labor poetry and labor poetry in general, what I mean is that I name and describe the tools and the tasks and the working conditions often unsafe working conditions and a working environment in the poems. And so I'm going to start with one, which is about a woman that lived next door to me when I was growing up. And she worked in a pork processing plant in a slaughterhouse. And no matter what the weather was, it could be, 80 degrees out or it could be 10 degrees out. And you'd see her leave her house, leave her apartment building in this big, heavy sort of a canvas coat and big boots and big jacket under the canvas coat and hat and gloves and everything, because she was a meat packer in the freezer part where the carcasses in the freezer. And so her name was Gail Swihart, and I also remember that she loved big band music, and this poem ends with a lyric from a famous big band tune, Moonlight Becomes You. And also, because of the period of when she grew up, which would have been probably the 30s and the 40s, 1930s and 40s. I use the word Java, meaning coffee, and Spam. Now, some of you people don't remember Spam, but that's what we ate at Spam sandwiches, or you'd fry them with an egg or something. Portrait of a Packer. In bitter winter or in 100-degree heat, she'd leave our street in red plaid jacket, blue jay overalls, ear flaps cap. In waterproof boots, she took the shortest route, cutting up alleys to the clapboard slaughterhouse. Punching a time clock propped on a pork renderings barrel, she crossed the curing room of hanged hogs, passed through the stainless steel door of the packing cooler. She stood up her whole shift, picking paraffin-coated boxes off the conveyor, quickly filling them with rows of sausages, then sealing the cellophane folds with a hot wrought iron. At lunchtime, she dragged a lard pail past the gravel lot to the only maple. Her back against bark, she savored Java, Spam, sometimes sang Glenn Miller tunes like String of Pearls and Little Brown Jug. She knew music was taboo, the company radio used for noontime livestock news or Cleveland Indians ball games. Moonlight becomes you, Gail. It goes with your hair. You certainly know the right thing to wear. And, so another labor historian, whose name is Joyce Kornbluh, Kornbluh, says the labor poet wants to memorialize the victims, to keep alive the grief and anger, and to instruct the audience on social justice issues. The labor poet writes about real people with real names and states that each life and death is important and matters. Well, I am going to read from Fragments from the Fire now, which a new issue is out here. I have some copies of these. And I had to rewrite this book because in 1911 it was in 2011 it was the 100th anniversary of the fire. And through the new knowledge from what's called fire science, the Triangle Fire had been studied. And so some of the information that I had to be corrected and updated as to how the fire moved through the building, how the drafts in the building worked on sucking this fire toward its victims. And also, there had been other changes. For example, when I wrote the poems, there were 20-some people who had to be identified only by number because they were so badly burned. And now all those victims have been identified through a lot of work through photographs of families that live in the area. They were able to actually track down and identify some of these persons. So there were many reasons to update the poems. But now I think I'm glad I did, because now we're on the eve of probably the huge wave of deregulation when the Triangle Fire was investigated. All the things about safety in buildings, sprinkler systems, child labor, social security, it just goes on and on. All these things mushroom and grew of this one tragic event in which 146 persons were killed, some as young as 14 years old. So, let me tell you a little bit more about the fire, and then I'll read from it. The Triangle Shirtwaist Company fire manufactured blouses for women and was located on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors of the Ash Building at the corner of Washington Place and Green Street in New York City's Washington Square. That's still there. The building is still there. It's a part of New York University. And the company employed up to 900 workers at a time, but on March 25, 1911, only about 500 were present. These were immigrants, most of whom could not speak or write the English language. Nearly all of them were female, primarily Russian or Italian, although 12 nationalities were known to be on the books. At about 4:45 p.m., just after pay envelopes had been distributed, a fire broke out. Not everyone was able to reach the elevators and stairways. On the 9th floor, because the bosses had kept the doors locked to keep out union organizers, workers were forced to jump from the windows. 146 people, some as young as 14, perished. So I'm going to read a few of these poems. The poems are told in the voices of the victims and of the survivors and of the witnesses. White Light. This is Sonia Levine speaking. It's not easy to teach us union. Garment girls shift like sand, start too young in the trade. Wait for Prince Charming to take 'em away. Well, when I arrived from Russia, my cheeks were like apples, and look now. But talk about a dreaming fool. Me, 13, in this golden land, longing to work at life and love, be what you call a builder of bridges. Yes, I'd go back. I'd show all Moscow I was a great American lady. My first position, feeding kerchiefs to machine. My first English sentence, watch your needle, 3,000 stitches a minute. Say, I was some swift kid in those days, 7,200 an hour, 86,000 pieces a day, $4 in the pay envelope, and that in the busy season. For 3 months, my pay was bread. I yearned to earn wages, save my little sister's passage. I was so lonely in America. Soon, like the rest, I grieved at my machine, swore I'd marry any old man just to get out. But one by one, the others left to marry and returned to the shop. In them, I saw my future in a white heat light no dreams could soften. And this poem is called Potter's Field. And Thomas Horton, who was one of the elevator operators in the building, it was 10 stories high. The fire was on the 8th, 9th, and 10th floors. Some people on the 8th floor were able to get down the stairs. The people on the 10th floor, some of them were able to get through the roof. But on the 9th floor is where the doors were locked. And most of the deaths were caused by these people having to jump out the 9th floor window. So Thomas Horton speaking, and he's telling me, the poet, about the fire. But he's also telling me what that neighborhood was like before the factory was there and before Washington Park was there. And then he's going to tell me what he witnessed and how he participated in trying to rescue the people from the building. Potter's Field. Thomas Horton speaks. A few of us back then were porters in the district, bundling scraps under the cutting table, or after the packers crated the shirtwaists, why, we'd haul them on down to Washington Place. My grandma told me when she was a girl, Washington Park was a potter's field, and used to say the nameless passed to glory anyway. I forgot to say the potter's field is a burial ground for nameless people and homeless people. And I think they still call it that today. Sorry. Washington Park was a potter's field, and she used to say the nameless passed to glory anyway. Soon as a high class built here, Potter's Field became a park with bushes and benches, a garden spot for their fancy townhouses. We laughed at how those homeless bones were pushing up a monument to President Washington, who once sold a slave for a barrel of molasses, a bolt of cotton cloth. Then the factories came and company housing, tenements you call them, crowded. You don't know the word, but you want to hear about the fire. Well, once the cries of fire broke out, the shouts and call bells came faster and faster until their sounds rang non-stop and at once, with screams and prayers for help or hope. Somehow Jaspar and Giuseppe kept that crammed car running while I stayed in the basement tending the machines so cables wouldn't snap or cabins crash into the pit. Because of the smoke, they couldn't see the floors, had to open up the doors by guesswork. Girl, we ran those cars till they couldn't run no more. We kept putting in switch cables till they ran with water and stuck. Circuit breakers were blowing out all over the place. The ladies were jumping on the cars, even slid down the ropes. Why, there were 20 on the roof. The ones that got inside grabbed at Jasper's arms, pulled his hair, jabbed his face. Christ Almighty, they were climbing down the cables. Well, that was a passenger car, you understand. Though later, the papers said a brave passerby had raced into the choking smoke to operate the freight elevator. Here I'd like to state some of us porters, all Negroes, testified at the trial. The headlines named Giuseppe, heroic elevator man. So most of the deaths occurred on the 9th floor. And so this is called 9th floor reprise. On the 9th floor, 58 girls had crowded into a cloakroom trying to get away from the fire. 9th floor reprise. The glass blackens and shatters. Who will come for us? Up on 10th, typists and bookkeepers leave ledgers to ashes, machines to melt. The packers and switchboard lady gone. The phone cords and crate slats split into stars and meteors. Up on 10th, our finished shirtwaists unfold, crack the crates, jump upright. They join their sleeves, dance the aura and mazurka, spin like dreidels. They call to us their makers, stitcher, presser, cutter, Tucker, I saw them piled, testified Fireman Wool. They pressed their faces toward a little window. I'm just going to stop now because I want to. This is a collaborative effort with an academic and a sweatshop activist. She teaches in Washington Trinity University in D.C. Michelle Gaffey, and so this one comes. These statistics come from sweatshops and factory fires in the new millennium. So, just to say that another reason why I wanted to bring this book out again. So, as recently as September 11th, 2012, 283 textile workers in Pakistan burned and suffocated to death in a factory fire because of locked exit doors, a lack of safety equipment, and inadequate labor laws. And then just 3 months after that, in 2012, 112 workers in Dhaka, Bangladesh, died in the Tazreen Fashions factory. These women and men were working mandatory overtime shifts in a building with faulty fire extinguishers, no fire escapes, and a locked exit door, causing many workers to jump to their desks to escape the heat and flames of their burning building. Multiple survivors of this blaze recall being forced to stay at their machines, trapped inside by collapsible gates, which managers pulled down to keep the works focused on production, even while the fire alarms sounded. And then, April 24th, 2013, 1,100 Bangladeshi garment workers were crushed to death. Now, up until this fire, the Triangle Fire in New York, was in 1911, and that was 146 deaths. And until this one, the deaths of garment workers by fire, 146 was the largest number. But this, in 2013, April 24th, 2013, 1,100 garment workers within the illegally constructed Rana Plaza collapsed near Dhaka, Bangladesh. At this factory, workers were threatened and ordered by management to continue with their work, even though the police had ordered an evacuation a day earlier because the building displayed obvious signs of significant structural damage. So I think tonight, on the eve of this inauguration, that these poems and these accounts are part of the demand that we consider how the deregulation of business, even inside the U.S., and both at state and national levels, has led to a decrease in funding for the agencies that are supposed to investigate workplaces for safety violations. And this essay goes on to also talk about tragedies in non-garment industrial fires. There was the Imperial Foods Processing Plant in Hamlet, North Carolina in 1991. And also, more recently in April 2013, you probably remember there was an explosion in a fertilizer plant in Texas. And so, it's all related. And I think we need to be thinking more about, collective resistance and global solidarity, because we're getting deregulation, union busting, all this stuff coming at us. So I'm just going to close with one more poem from this book, and that will be this is the funeral for the nameless. And Rose Schneiderman was 13, something like 13 years old. She was a survivor, and she was addressing an audience after the fire about what she saw for the funeral for the nameless. Rose Schneiderman speaks. For miles, the bereaved stream under a single banner. We demand fire protection. The bunting's blue dye drips down arms and faces of the honor guard, 8 of our youngest garment girls. From the tops of tenements, bending out of windows, watching us, women, children, the old ones, lean on sashes, stare through rain screen down to deep street, where white horses draped in black net pull an empty hearse, mountain of blossoms. As we march up Fifth Avenue, there they are, on tops of hundreds of buildings, structures no different from the Ash Building, and as for lacking fire protection, many much worse than Triangle. It is this, not the cold rain, that's making me sick. At each curb's turning, window banks empty of waving white handkerchiefs, thunder drums down the narrow stairways. Thousands pour to Evergreen, where over the empty pits, rabbi, priest, preacher bless the waiting coffins. With holy water hymns, their prayers pronounce the placard's numerals. Number 46, number 50, number 61, 95, 103, 115, 127.
Well, I want to thank first the poets, Chris Llewellyn, Patrick Pepper, and Don Illich for taking on us on this amazing voyage this evening. And I also would like to thank the City of Takoma Park, which so wonderfully supports the work of poets, and also to Marilyn Sklar, who is so responsible for making sure that these evenings actually happen, and also to Sarah Daines, who's head of the Department of Community Development, we're sort of her chickens, her hens, that she's in charge of us. And thank you all so much for coming. I sort of want to leave you with the last thought. I just recently saw the movie Patterson. I don't know how many people have, but if you haven't, you have to go see it. It's a story about a poet who's a bus driver, and he's just a really, really, really nice person, but you also sort of see how he works. And in the beginning, nothing happens. I mean, you just go through every day with him for about a week, and you get into his rhythm. And then there's a terrible catastrophe, and then a wonderful thing happens. So not the night that I saw it, but the next morning I woke up and I thought, oh, this movie has given me the answer. It just means every day you have to get up and drive your bus. So thank you all. Thank you all for coming.